Parenting is such a multifaceted role. It will challenge everything you think about yourself, everything you think about the world, the values that you have for your family, and you're not expected to get it right away. It is a process. It is a journey. It is, getting up every single morning and hardly sleeping the night before sometimes, which is just different on your nervous system. So there's so many things at play. I think we tend to get really hard on ourselves. When times are tough, my biggest suggestion, just sit down on the floor and play with your kids. That's it. Because you get this one little window, and they really don't care if your clothes are clean.
Yeah.
They don't care where they're going to go to college. They don't care how much money is in the bank. They don't even care if mom and dad are necessarily completely getting along at that time.
Yeah.
We're holding all these other things in our head about our own relationships and who we are now. Just sit down and play with your kids on the floor.
There's a story in the Bible where Jesus, there's these two sisters, right? Mary and Martha, and Jesus is hanging out at their house, and Mary is sitting at Jesus' feet, just hanging out and talking and learning and laughing and all this stuff. And her sister Martha's in the kitchen cooking and making food and all this stuff and just being very responsible. And this responsible one, Martha, goes to Jesus and is like, "Hey, tell my sister to get up and help me." And he's like, "No, she's doing the right thing. She's doing the thing." Yes. And I love that story because it reminds me of not necessarily Jesus, but with my kids especially. Am I trying to be responsible all the time? And I'm always cooking and cleaning, and my wife's cooking and cleaning, and we're making sure they get their homework done because we're homeschooling and all the things right. But sometimes it's no, what's the better thing? To sit on the floor, like you just said, and play. And I have to remind myself of that constantly, and Heather has to remind herself constantly. It's okay to sit and just enjoy.
I remember one year I called it the year of sliced apples because I don't know if you ever go to the grocery store and walk by, but you can buy pre-sliced apples.
Yeah.
And I would look at them and be like, who doesn't have time to cut apples? And one day I was like, someone cuts apples for you? This is the best invention ever.
Yeah, that's
so
funny.
It's kind of making those, even though it's a tiny swap, it was just such a metaphor for where we're at and that there's help out there and there is support out there, and it might just look like, well, someone cut the apples for me and left them in the grocery store and I can just pick them up and move on.
Yeah. And it won't always be I think it's a good reminder, it won't always be that way, right?
It won't always be that way.
It's a short time frame. Right now my wife, I think, I don't want to speak for her, but I think she struggles because a big piece of her identity is as a chef or as a cook, a baker. She's an incredible cook. She can make anything in the world, and she just can't do it because she's got these two little kids and she's homeschooling them, and all of a sudden it's 4:30 and there's no dinner started, and you can't make a great meal, in an hour. It's takes all day.
Yes.
And she's really struggled with this idea of do we just order out again? And she's not feeling right. So I try to remind her often that this is just a phase. If we have to order out food 4 nights a week, that's okay. If we have to go get meal prepped, if we have to get our apples sliced, that's okay right now.
Exactly. Your values are not there. They're just different.
Yeah.
The things that you value are going to be different. Maybe you more value the time together and the connection versus who you might have been as a chef. And that's hard to let go of. I mean, that's the hardest part, right? It's a new identity. But I guarantee you, she'll get back in the kitchen.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it probably helps. It helps to remember, I think, maybe that you're not abandoning the identity. You're just setting it on the shelf for a little bit.
Yep.
Right now, I'm not going to be that person. I'm not going to be, and it can be in any area of life, right? You're just saying, hey, right now I'm not the entrepreneur. Or right now I'm not the chef. Right now I'm not the writer or the author or the coach. I'm going to put that there for now. It's still there. And I can come back to it later.
Absolutely. And when you have those little moments in time, maybe you have a relative come visit or you hire a babysitter and you're like, oh my goodness, you know what I really would like to do would be, I'm going to cook a really nice meal, or I'm going to go to the grocery store by myself.
Yeah.
Give yourself those little gifts of reminding you who you are.
Yeah. Ooh, that's really good.
Yeah.
All right, so let's go to, I want to get to where Jason and our paths cross. So it starts with, you were coaching, a number of people, just kind of growing that.
Yeah.
And then there was a gentleman named Kevin who you were coaching, and I was in a small mastermind group with him. I think he was part of Go Abundance.
Yeah.
And Kevin and I mentioned how I should probably get a coach. And he said, oh, you should talk to my guy, Jason. And I'm like, okay. So I did, and we hit it off. And that was, again, probably 6 or 7 years ago.